Hello, everybody. Welcome in. My name is Mr. America, the Bearded Truth, Jason Lyon. I want to thank you guys for coming in today. I know it's been kind of a weird week, of course. Here, I've been trying to maintain somewhat of a schedule, and it's been a struggle all on its own. So I want to thank you guys so much for being here. I know it's been a little crazy, so we will go through. We will give the updates on what the last video was about, which was the drag queen story hour. I think that we certainly do need to go through and cover that real quick. But we'll go through that, and from there we will talk a little bit about what's going on from President Trump. He's trying to fight criminalized homophobia. Or criminalize homosexuality, I'm sorry, on a global scale. What that means, how that's going to function, how that's going to work. So that'll be an interesting topic for sure. We'll talk a little bit about Lara Logan. If you guys don't know who that is, that was a CBS reporter, and she was a former CBS News foreign correspondent. And we'll talk about her fight against the media. It's a big story there. And of course, we've been following the Jussie Smollett case and everything involved there. So of course, we got to come through and we got to clean up the trash, if you will. We got to put to bed the rest, or put to rest all of this nonsensical bull that came from the left of believe all victims and the atrocities, and you just have to 100% believe people because they made a claim. So we'll go through all of that tonight. It's obviously a jam-packed filled show. We have, and of course, I would be remiss by not covering an issue that was brought to the media's attention, and that was revolving around the police having another no-knock raid and actually killing 2 innocent civilians, 2 people that were not should never have had a warrant be placed against them and their property, but nonetheless 2 people killed. So we have to cover that story as well. Like I said, I would be remiss not to cover it. So thank you guys all for joining in. I appreciate you all for being here. It is Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, the normal time in which you get me, the Bearded Truth. So thank you guys all so much. And I realize for some reason the comments are not wanting to display. We were going to cover the Coast Guard lieutenant. We can cover that one as well. I will throw that in for the last bit. Thank you for bringing that up, NCAA. As usual, right? There's a lot of stories that come through, and sometimes I miss big stories, like a guy that was willing to come out and just kill, right? And that was the intent, was to come kill people. And so they looked in his basement, found a bunch of guns, and said, "Yep, this guy was trying to kill people." News for you, news for people. Some people do collect guns. I have some coworkers who collect guns, because guns are not inherently bad things, and just because somebody collects them doesn't mean that they're a bad person. So let's start off with the drag queen story hour. So for those of you guys who missed the last show was on Monday night, 7 p.m. Actually, it was closer to 8 p.m. But we covered a story from Five Forks, South Carolina, in which we had drag queen story hour. Now, I went there and I was interviewing both sides of the aisle because it's important that we have honest discussions, and even people we disagree with, we have to go and discuss with them. So the two organizers for the event and the two organizers for the protest against the event, I sat down with, got a good in-depth interview. Welcome in, Lady Fritzer. And I was excited to have this. And so coming from this situation, there was two big things that really went wrong, and it's certainly something that you guys can gain value from hearing. So it's not just pertinent to this one specific instance. So it was clear that the Conservative Party, specifically the Tea Party in our area, opposed this idea, and they actually were able to rile up some of the representatives in the area, whether it was county council or wherever, in order to push for legislation. There was two ideas that are floating out there, and we'll go through them both. The first one was the idea that in education, in South Carolina's education system, there is a level in which you don't talk to kids about sexual things or things of sexual nature before their age of 12 or before 6th grade. And so one of the representatives, Gary Smith, wanted to take that portion of it, cherry pick that out of the education system and transpose it over to the public libraries and say, look, if it has anything to do with sexuality or sexual nature, then it should be banned from the public libraries. So, couple issues there, right? So first things first, we can all agree that the education system is different than the public libraries. I think we can all agree with that, right? The public libraries are not the same thing. At public libraries, you should be able to hold events because it's supposed to be something that is, you can have a small, quiet event in which you teach people, you bring lessons, you can share experiences, and you can bring authors and everything else. Education system, not quite so much. There should be a little bit more structure there because it is, by the way that the legislation and everything else around these school systems, you don't really have a choice as to which school you go to because school choice is not something that's accepted across America. So you're kind of thrown into the public school system unless you can afford to get out of it, or unless you have somebody that's staying home to be able to provide homeschooling. So on there should be a little more protection when it comes to how the kids are being taught in that structuring. When it comes to a public library, the public library is not something that kids are being forced to being brought to. If they take a field trip there, the parents are able to opt out. When it comes to a public library, it is on a voluntary basis, right? There are many of us, and let's be honest, right? I have not been to a public library since this event and probably over a decade. I don't go to the library very often. I probably should start going a little more, get into book clubs, get to learning with other people and getting involved in that way. But we just don't go to public libraries. So it is on a voluntary basis. So we shouldn't be trying to say, well, this can't be accepted because parents shouldn't be able to take their children to this. Trying to enact a law in that way is a way to use the government as a conversation ender. It's a way to use the laws and legislation as a political weapon in order to silence your opposition. So I opposed it on the grounds that regardless of what side you're on, you should not be using the government as a weapon to be able to prohibit the speech of those you disagree with, right? The government should be there to protect all speech, not to censor speech or to only allow certain speech. Okay? So on that ground, Gary Smith was very wrong. He also said some pretty blatantly lies. And one of those was that the fact that he said these drag queens were pushing transgenderism, and that was demonstrably false, right? So this drag queen story hour is about accepting people who may be acting different than you, people that are abnormal, right? Outside of the normal bell curve, if you will. And so it's not to encourage people to be different, but encouraging people to accept people who are different. And that message is different than trying to groom somebody, groom people for pedophilia, or groom people into becoming, showing signs of gender dysphoria. So I don't think Gary Smith was, I'm not going to attribute it to malice. I don't think that he was coming out there to try to make this worse than what it was, but you have to attribute it to ignorance. And because we're in the Bible Belt, that may be one of those things. But I think an honest conversation with Gary Smith needs to be held. The other thing that was coming about was because of the entire event, there was $58,000 that the sheriff office said was an increased cost to their departments, to the FBI, to the local authorities. So that was the local police, as well as the highwaymen and a couple other agencies. So they said $58,000. Now, in the future, we don't want to take this burden and put it on the taxpayer. What we want to do is say, look, if you create an event and you have protesters and we have to provide security, then you have to take that bill. Then you have to take this. Free burn, man. And so a lot of people said, yeah, that's a great idea. That's a great idea. Why don't we do this? And I was looking at conservatives, and they were the ones that were supporting this because the other side would obviously be the one defeated by this political move. But then I point out, hey, are you in favor of Ben Shapiro? Well, there was hundreds of thousands of dollars that were being spent on security. Should he be the burden of doing this? No, he shouldn't, right? Because you come out and speak to the public, because you practice and exercise your First Amendment right, or your freedom of speech, if you will. Just because you exercise that doesn't mean that it should come with a financial burden. You should be able to come out and speak on your soapbox, and if people want to listen, they can listen. If they want to protest, they can protest. An issue that came about with this was that the sheriff himself, the sheriff in Five Forks in Simpsonville County, had actually suspended everybody in the area as their Second Amendment rights. So now nobody was able to protect themselves, and so they forced themselves to have the monopoly on that. They forced people to be defenseless, and by that action, they themselves had to be the ones be responsible for the security and the protections of these people. So you don't get to take an action, remove the defense of somebody, and then say you have to pay us for doing this. So on the grounds of logic, reason, and understanding of the First Amendment, it is absolutely abhorrent that people would push this out there and accept this as a normal or an acceptable or a tolerable thing. It's absolutely 100% abhorrent, and it needs to be thrown in the trash along with a lot of the other ideas that are floating around in the world of politics. Glad we could get through that one real quick. So, Drag Queen Story Hour. Conservatives are trying to use the club of the government, which would eventually lead to even themselves being unable to fund their own freedom of speech. So you can't have people like Dennis Prager. You can't have Ben Shapiro, Louder with Crowder, Steven Crowder. You can't have anybody, right? Jordan Peterson. None of those people would be really acceptable because they don't want the burden of having to pay for that large amount of security in order to protect the large crowds of people that want to come see them. So understanding how logic works. If it applies to one side, it applies to the other side, or at least it should equally. And so on those grounds, it's just bad ideas. All right. While we're going through bad ideas, so I'm sitting at work, right? Sitting at work, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm not making enough money. Oh, it was Greenville County? I apologize. Yes, Greenville County. So I'm sitting at work and I'm thinking, I'm not making enough money. You know what I need? I need a good hate crime. If I can have a good hate crime, then I would be in a much better place. And so I go ahead and I I practice a couple times. I run through it. I figure out this hate crime is going to work. And just absolutely everything that I wanted to do failed flat on its face. And this, of course, is an referendum not a referendum. This is very similar to what Jussie Smollett did. Following the Jeff Epstein stories, I'm starting to do my research on that whole story. I have not gotten into it yet. So, did anyone really believe the Mueller report was coming out next week? I believe that it will still be coming out, but the problem is it's not coming out to the public, right? Something that William Barr had expanded upon during his nomination process was the fact that it doesn't go straight out to the people. It goes to the Attorney General. The Attorney General then, because that report is going to be classified when it gets to him, he's going to write his own report, and then that gets distributed out. So you're not going to get it right away, but it's going to be coming on through. Trump is on his flight logs. Ooh, that's interesting. That's a good spin. I like it. I like these turns. So going through with the Jussie Smollett situation. So now we finally have the full clear picture. Now we can actually talk about it all and with some serious certainty. So there's been a lot of gaslighting. There's been a lot of believe all victims. There's been a lot of he's truly a victim. He's a victim of his own actions, because here's how it played out. As the way that it's being narrated by the facts and by the police chief was the fact that Jussie Smollett, while working on the Empire, didn't feel like he was making enough money there. And so he had written a letter. He wrote a letter that was filled with hate and had some white powder with it, and that happened to be aspirin. Sent it to himself, and that didn't give him enough. That didn't show that enough people hated him for being a person of color and for being a homosexual. And so he had to step up the rhetoric. He had to really bring it home that he was going to be a victim in order to get more publicity and thereby create a stronger demand to have another victim, right? This victimhood hierarchy that we have in our society has certainly led to people saying, if I'm just the next tier up on the victimhood, if I just have just one more victim tally under my belt, then I will be worth so much more. This is a huge issue. This is something we've been talking about for a long time. And so as this continues, as this goes on, Jussie Smollett goes, all right, I need to have this happen. And so he grabs an extra and he grabs his personal trainer and he says, look, guys, I'm going to give you guys $4,000. Yes, ESEC. I will give you guys $4,000. I'll write you a check right now, a check, because there's no paper trail when there's a check. So I'll write you a check for $3,500. At the completion of this, I'll give you another $500. Don't worry, you guys gotta go get a ski mask. You gotta go get some rope, get some bleach. Don't worry, I'll pay for that as well. So he pays these people. They go through, and on the night in Chicago at 2 o'clock in the morning, approximately, Jussie's like, this is the time it's going to go down. So he is walking to Subway, grabs his Subway sandwich. I believe it was a tuna sandwich, because that's the most important detail here, because, it's really fishy. But he grabs his sandwich, he's on his way back, and that's when he meets the brothers. Ooh, it's the brothers. So along with the plan, Jussie Smollett, knowing that all of Chicago is heavily surveilled, wants to pick an area that has a video camera, because if the media can take this clip and really push it out there, he's gonna become a nobody to a somebody to a hero for the left overnight. Well, he picked wrong. He picked one area in which the camera is directly perpendicular to him, so directly in the opposite way, and the attack goes down. And the rest is really history. So he had made this up in order to advance his career, and what has come as a result is that he actually got locked up. $100,000 bail bond got posted, so he's getting out on that. So he posts $100,000, paid $3,500 already to the brothers. And during this investigation, if he's tried and held to the maximum extent, he will also have to pay for the entire investigation. Do you think that this would be enough for the Empire to throw him off? Absolutely 100% no. 2 hours after being released on bail, he is on set recording the next episode. Yes, Jussie Smollett, what a victim. He got victimized by his own self. And a tweet is popping into my mind right now, and it was to the likes of, if they're going to kill off, if on Empire they're going to kill off Jussie Smollett, I hope that it is done with him bleeding out after shooting himself in the foot, because that is the way that it needs to go. And because certainly, right, Jussie Smollett, if he can fake an entire hate crime, get the entire media, get the New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN, MSNBC, CBS, ABC, all of the ABC or the alphabet companies, get all of the media, get all of the people, all of the Democrats, right? You had Cory Booker, you had Kamala Harris, you had all of this other stuff, all these other people, these predominant people in politics right now coming out and saying, look, we need to push anti-lynching laws, we need to strengthen ourselves on the aggressions against people of color, we have to fight racism, we have to fight hate crimes, we have to fight homophobia, we have to fight all these things. And to turn around and find out that it was false puts eggs on the faces of millions of people once again. That's right, after the Covington Catholic kids, not even 2 weeks after the Covington Catholic kids of getting eggs on the faces of everybody out there, they get it again. You're fine, NCAA. I understand that you're so sick of hearing about him. I haven't covered him since the last time I was on the show. Well, since 2 times before. So I gotta keep people fresh, because there are some people that do come here for their main source of information, and I have to provide it to them, of course. So I want to go through, right? The Daily Caller actually has, here's the list of hoax hate crimes in the Trump era. That's right, just during the Trump era, since January of 2017. Since January of 2017, there are 21 items in this list, including on November 2016. Oh, I guess this is from November 2016. Anti-Muslim hate crime in Michigan turns out to be a hoax. A Muslim woman at the University of Michigan received national attention from national outlets like the Washington Post in November of 16 after she claimed a drunk 20-something-year-old man threatened to light her on fire if she didn't remove her hijab. The university condemned the hateful attack, which turned out to be a hoax. Bisexual student faked Trump-inspired hate crimes in November 2016. A gas station racism goes viral, then the police debunk it in November 2016. A white man robbed a Muslim woman of her hijab and wallet, except it never happened, in November of 16. A church organist vandalizes his own church in November 2016. A drunk white man attacks a Muslim woman in a story that also never happened in December of 16. A white guy sets his own car on fire, paints racial slur on his own garage in December of 16. A prankster tricks liberal journalists into spreading anti-Trump hoax in December of 16. A student writes anti-Muslim graffiti on his own doors in February of 2017. Israeli man behind anti-Semitic bomb threats in the U.S. April of 2017. A hoax on St. Olaf in May of 2017. A fake hate crime at the Air Force Academy goes viral in September of 17. A K-State fake hate crime in November of 2017. Racist graffiti carried out by a non-white student, November of 17. A waiter fakes a note calling himself a terrorist in July of 2018. A waitress fakes a racist note, blames law enforcement, July of 2018. A New York woman's hate crime that wasn't, in September of 2018. A student faked racist notes, December of 2018. The Covington catastrophe in January of 2019. It's just amazing, right? I can go through that entire list and say, look at just of how absolutely quickly that the media would rather be on the message quickly than to actually wait for the information, to vet the information, to do their damn job, and to do it properly. These hoaxes, what does a hoax do? A hoax, all that it does is makes it to where the actual victims of these crimes are treated with more scrutiny. Right? You should scrutinize every allegation out there, of course, right? Don't believe anybody just because somebody says something. You should always be trusting and verifying, though. You should always verify the information. So when people come out and they're actually a victim, they have a harder case against them when you have somebody like Jussie Smollett who says, look, they said MAGA country. And last I checked, Nigeria was not a MAGA country. They were not a country that was really even caring that much about Trump because they've got their own issues there. So I think it was really stupid of him to set himself up in such a way to have such a blatant paper trail, to have such a easily followed and easily destroyed story, and to think it's going to come out in his favor. Now, there are a couple rumors out there that Jussie Smollett had a couple other people, and this was a bigger story. This was a bigger thing. And if this was a bigger thing, if there were more people involved on this, then it just shows you that that stupid ideas, that stupid plans are even... It doesn't matter how many people you have. If your idea is bad, it's going to be bad, whether it's one person or two people, three people, four people, right? It's certainly better to have better ideas. And certainly if you suck at acting, if you're a no-name, a hate crime is not going to make it better for you. It's just disgusting, right? So get out of here, Jussie Smollett. You're a trash human being, and it's so despicable that even still, to this very moment, there are people, there are cast members of Empire saying, I still believe Jussie, because he's still going around saying, it didn't do this. I didn't do this. Despite the fact that both the brothers said, yeah, he paid us. He paid us to do this. Here's how we trained it. Here's how we practice it. And this is where we did it. And the whole 9 yards on the whole thing, right? These were not people that were like, these are not hardened criminals. These are not people that are thugs in the streets. These are not gangsters. These are people that go, oh, you're a cop? All right. Well, I'm going to be honest with you, because I'm not going to go to jail for this guy. I'm not going to suffer for this. But Jussie Smollett, had they picked up two white people, do you think that he would have accepted his lie and been like, no, I don't want two innocent people to go to prison for this? Of course not. Because it was all about him. When you are so selfish that you're willing to lie, not on a small itty-bitty thing. Not on a small itty-bitty thing, but to make grotesque accusations after you fabricated it, and allowing for potentially two innocent people to be thrown in the slammer for years. It really speaks a lot about Jussie Smollett and his character. It's truly disgusting. Akamu Bay, however you pronounce the name, I apologize for butchering it. Do we want this to happen so we can go on a rant? No, absolutely not. I would rather to talk about the stupidity of what's coming from the White House, from the DC, from Congress. But I take no joy. I take absolutely no joy in saying that he is a despicable person for what he has done. What about the kid that got shot 14 times in Chicago because the police felt threatened? We will cover some police brutality later on in the show. I am absolutely 100%. I don't find the police to be exempt from scrutiny and exempt from being criticized. You might be new here, so I recommend you hitting that follow button. We talk about a lot of things here. And you might think that you know me because I oppose people making hoaxes of hate crimes, but stick around a little bit, you might learn something. So let's go on to Trump is continuing Obama's opposition to other countries' anti-gay laws. And this has LGBT leaders angry. So this article I'm going to read for you guys is from Reason from Scott Shackford. Written on the 20th. So President Trump's administration plans to continue the U.S. government's advocacy favoring the decriminalization of homosexuality globally. This has, in a baffling yet predictable pattern, angered several loud voices in the LGBT community. How dare President Trump? How dare he stand up for gay people? How dare he talk about not allowing gay people to be criminalized, to be killed, to be hung, to be stoned, to be destroyed, to be thrown off the rooftops of places? What kind of a bigot would stand against that? You let them kill the gays in those countries. You let them send people to prison. He has angered them. The TDS is real, boys and girls. Yesterday, NBC News reported that the administration, pushed by U.S. Ambassador to Germany, Richard Grenell, who is openly gay, was planning to launch a worldwide effort to end the criminalization of homosexuality worldwide. There are 70 countries that still have laws on the books that treat homosexual behavior as a crime. That is completely abhorrent and disgusting, right? Just because you want to sleep with a man, just because you want to sleep with a woman, just because you want to sleep with somebody else that's consenting. It should be no one's issue but the person you're trying to sleep with. And some countries have extremely harsh penalties. This announcement is widely being seen as an attempt to challenge and target Iran and potentially get international support for sanctions. Why not Saudi Arabia? The response to this announcement was nearly comical and a fabricated outrage among certain LGBT voices who wanted to scream from the rooftop that Trump really doesn't care about gay people. The Human Rights Campaign, an LGBT lobbying organization that typically favors Democratic Party interests, responded with a thread of tweets about how much Trump administration's policies and practices have not been in favor of the LGBT folks. Though if one of your complaints is that Trump made fun of Vice President Mike Pence's anti-gay attitudes, you're kind of stepping on your own point. An even stranger response came from the gay magazine Out, which gave space to a writer who attempts to argue that the plan smacks of some sort white colonialism coming from Western countries because the targets are in the Middle East, Africa, and the Caribbean. The headline of Matthew Rodriguez's piece is "The Trump's plan to decriminalize homosexuality is an old racist tactic." That's right, boys and girls. You want to stop people from being killed? You want to stop people being thrown in cages for who they sleep with? You're a racist. That's it, guys. If I threw out the hard R word, that's it. That's all it takes. I threw that out there, and now your entire argument's been destroyed. Mind you, a significant amount of anti-gay animus in some non-Muslim African and Caribbean countries is a result of the spread of certain strains of Western Christianity to these countries. It was colonialism that arguably pushed anti-gay attitudes on some of the countries and encouraged them to treat their gay and transgender inhabitants as evil threats. It's just as remarkably stupid, short-sighted argument for a gay outlet to suggest that anti-gay governments should not be subject to criticism on the basis of the race or ethnicity of their leaders. The gay press has regularly reported on the violence and abuse foisted on LGBT people in these countries. But that's not even the real punchline here. The actual punchline is that the United States has already signed onto a UN declaration that called for the decriminalization of homosexuality years ago. NBC News is not accurate in calling this a new push, though the motives may be shifting. President Barack Obama's administration, just months after he came into office in 2009, signed onto a UN statement condemning human rights violations against the LGBT folks and opposing criminalization of LGBT behavior. It had come around during President G.W. Bush's administrations, and he didn't sign it at the time because he was concerned it was an attempt to override states' rights on issues like marriage recognition. Bush was widely criticized by LGBT groups for not signing onto the declaration. That's right, guys. He was a racist because he didn't sign onto it. President Trump for signing onto it and for continuing the push from President Barack Obama, it's because he's a racist. You're a racist if you do. You're a racist if you don't. It is a beautiful world when you're on the left because you just shout racist and conversation over, you win. The U.S. was the only Western country to decline back then. The Hill, followed by NBC's reporting yesterday, and a State Department representative makes it very clear. The reality is this is not a big policy departure, says Palladino. This is long-standing and it's bipartisan. When you asked whether you would describe the meeting as a new initiative, Palladino replied, "I would say that this is a good opportunity to listen and to discuss ideas about how the United States can advance decriminalization of homosexuality around the world. And that's been our policy." So just to be clear here, Trump is being yelled at by some LGBT voices for continuing on a policy implemented by the Obama administration. And the Obama administration's move was a wildly lauded reversal of Bush's rejection. And Bush's rejection of this very same declaration was previously attacked by LGBT leaders. Yes, the hypocrisy is real. The cognitive dissonance is real. It's not about the message. It's not about what you're saying. It's not about being accepting of others. It's about where it comes from, guys. That's all it's all about. Trump has shown himself to be a very transactional political leader. His supports for policies is often tied to what he stands to gain politically from their implementation. This is hardly new for a politician. That's right, boys and girls. Trump is not entirely a new branch on the tree. It's just that it's extremely obvious when it comes to Trump. He's not empathetic, and he's not very good at pretending to care about things that he obviously cares little about. So it's probably very true that Grinnell and Trump want to use this policy to try to attack Iran in some way. The appropriate way to respond to all of these decisions is to grasp Trump's transactional nature. Trump is just flat out not going to see a relationship between this policy encouraging other countries to decriminalize homosexuality and his anti-amnesty measures. And that makes it harder for people from these very same countries to come to America for safety. And he deserves criticism for that. But by pushing those other countries to decriminalize homosexuality is a positive move that advances human liberty and should be supported. Unless you're from the LGBT community, then you don't support President Trump because he's racist. If this policy moves into a space where the U.S. attempts to use coercive tactics or force, military or sanctions, to punish other countries, then that behavior should be opposed. You don't have to support actual aggression against Iran to support a policy calling for the better treatment of gay and transgender people there. End of article. So, yes, that last little bit, that was the important part. That was the part that I really wanted to expand upon. So, with this movement from the Obama administration and continued on by President Trump, it's ridiculous to think that it is racist or whatever else, whatever the loony left is coming on with these things. And from there, Bobby, you got to slow down, man. Bobby, I know you're still hurting from the last conversation, but we're gonna go topic by topic. We'll get to the lieutenant. All right, we'll get to the lieutenant. Don't you worry. So one of the issues, one of the worries is how are we going to enforce this? So if it comes to the situation where Iran, Saudi Arabia, or some country out there is not willing to abide by this and still maintains a criminal laws and persecution for individuals who partake or practice homosexuality, right? What is the Trump administration? What is the future Democrat? What is the future Republican? What are they going to be willing to do in order to fight against this, right? What are they willing to do? Are they going to just stop at sanctions? Are they going to go and send boots on the ground and topple another regime, topple another government in order to help nation build, in order to bring America's freedom to another nation, right? Are we going to be stuck in this nation? We're going to be stuck in Iran the same way that we're stuck in Iraq, the same way that we're stuck in Afghanistan, the same way that we're stuck in Syria, the same way that we're stuck in supporting Yemen, the same way that we're we can go through all of the issues. It's just looking at all these things. Is this going to be another excuse? Is this going to be another reason to put the American troops, the American boots on the ground in another nation build for years, spend and allocate the money that is taken from your paychecks, the money that is taken from your transactions, the money that is taken from your death, and to allocate that over to these other foreign nations? I really don't think. Anasep 2020 cracks me up when these Trumpite fools try to claim he is not a racist. Too funny. I never said that he wasn't racist. I never said anything about that. So I'm glad that you're sitting here assuming, and you're assuming that I'm a Trumpite. I've been criticized many a times because I'm not a huge Trump fan, but that's cool. It's cool. And Bobby 46 has shown that he is incapable of logical discussion, so I wouldn't use him as a reference for really anything. So anyways, continuing on. So that entire situation, it's a good thing. It's a good thing to actually advocate against the criminalization of people for who they want to have sex with. I've been a proud supporter of the individuals within the LGBT community. I've been a proud supporter of people that are gay, of lesbians, of bis, of even transgender people, right? People who suffer from gender dysphoria. I'm an advocate for them. The movements, as you can tell by this, when the movement goes, President Trump is trying to help us out worldwide, he's a racist, right? When you have that, it's clear that the movement, the groups, the organizations itself don't even reflect the people within it. And so certainly there is a large amount of Trump derangement syndrome. Because it came from Trump, it's obviously a bad thing. But when Obama did the same thing, and when he started this trend, it was a good thing. You're a nonsensical fool when you stand there and support it like that. Ugh. Nonsensical fool. here, let's get through this. Let's go through the Coast Guard lieutenant debacle, because Bobby 46 is crying himself right now because I haven't covered it yet. Let's go through this. All right. The U.S. Coast Guard lieutenant. So there was a situation in which last week it was kind of interesting. So the day that the big news on Jussie Smollett came out, there was a hit list from a Coast Guard lieutenant that came out the same day. It's always interesting how these things pop up at the same time, and so we'll go through this. U.S. Coast Guard lieutenant arrested last week on a weapons and drug charges is a white nationalist who appeared to have a hit list of Democratic lawmakers and activists, as well as the prominent media personalities, federal prosecutors said Wednesday. In a motion for pretrial detention filed in federal court in Maryland, authorities said Lieutenant Christopher Paul Hansen, who's 49, was arrested Friday and charged with unlawful possession of a firearm and an opioid called tramadol. However, the filing described the charges as a proverbial tip of the iceberg and referred to Hassan as a domestic terrorist who meant to murder innocent civilians on a scale rarely seen in the country. The filing was first noted by researchers from George Washington University's program on extremism. So, going through this situation, right? Having that list is obviously 100% wrong, and he should be treated as a domestic terrorist for wanting, for doing searches on finding the actual, for attempting to dox different members of the media, for different politicians. I guess Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was on there. Oh, here it is. And listed in Category A was House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Maxine Waters, MSNBC personalities Joe Scarborough, Chris Hayes, Ari Melber, Don Lemon. In Category B was Ilhan Omar, CNN personalities Chris Cuomo and Van Jones, and the Democratic Socialists of America. Just the whole entire group of Democratic Socialists of America. So this guy had a long laundry list. He was trying to go through, grab the activists, grab the people that he could in order to obviously commit some atrocities against them. Persecute him for that. Go after this guy, because anyone who wants to use violence in order to win the argument or to create terror is certainly worth being denounced. And a Trump supporter like you think, really, what? Yeah, he's like, I wouldn't worry about Bobby too much. He's not a very smart guy. Now, there was a part of this in which the media, of course, because the media as a whole, right, between Fox News, between CNN, between MSNBC, CBS, ABC, Washington Post, New York Times, Salon, Vogue, whatever it is that you want to talk about, all of these medias, all of these different platforms, all of the mainstream medias, if you will, are anti-gun and anti-Second Amendment, all right? And so they wanted to go here and say that according to the documents, federal agents found 15 firearms and conservatively more than 1,000 rounds of ammunition from his cramped basement apartment. He had over 1,000 rounds and 15 firearms. It's really not that much ammo. All right. I've had neighbors that have had an excess of 40 firearms in their house. Not a crazy person, right? So maybe you can attribute that to it, but they've gone on, and what we've seen is some of the quote unquote pundits, some of the contributors to these sources, saying, look, if somebody has more than 3 firearms, more than 5 firearms, then they're obviously an insane person that are looking to kill people. No, you see, there's this thing called the Second Amendment. There's this thing called having a natural right to be able to own whatever property you want, to be able to collect firearms if that's what you so desire. And to think that because somebody has this, that they're obviously trying they obviously have a narrative or an agenda to go and take out a bunch of people is to be completely ignorant. And I think to be that ignorant on this is to have extreme prejudice and to be exercising extreme malice. And certainly that's worth denouncing any and every time that's brought up. It is disgusting. No, Bobby doesn't listen. So I'm looking at the same picture. That's not a lot of ammo. Let me be honest with you, right? As somebody who works around firearms and firearm accessories. That is not a lot of ammo. That's not a lot of firearms. It's really not that much stuff. Your average gun collector has about the same, if not more. Your average. It's really not that much. So you get into this issue where you say, look, this guy's a bad person. This guy is a disgusting person. Is that the only reason he was arrested, or was there more? There was more, right? So I'm focusing on kind of the bigger picture, the parts that people wanted to really focus on. When this was dropped last week. I think it was late last week, and shortly thereafter, the media showed up the hypocrisy of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez for having a very luxurious apartment, and she came out with a fury, right? Every time that she gets brought up, every time she conflates it to another issue and says, look, there was just a lieutenant in the Coast Guard that was just arrested for wanting to come and kill me, and you're going to talk about where I live, how disgusting, you guys wanting me dead, this, that, and the other. Really just being nonsensical. But as I read earlier, his weapons and drug charges. So it was also the what was it? Tramadol. So he had an opioid tramadol. There's stuff in there, right? Prosecutor said that Hassan regularly read a manifesto written by Anders Breivik, a Norwegian far-right extremist who killed 77 people in a pair of 2011 terror attacks and stockpiled weapons and ammunition. So they're using all this stuff and say, it's all just clues, it's all just keys. Maybe it was for him, but the idea that they took this and they said that anyone who does anything similar, anyone who collects guns, is obviously a right-wing lunatic and looking to kill people. It's just dishonest. It is just 100% dishonest. All right, the left lies at the ease of which you breathe. It's one of my favorite quotes from Dennis Prager, and it's absolutely 100% accurate. There's a huge issue there, a huge monumental issue when it comes to the left and the way that they project out this media. So. And while we're talking about the left lying at the ease in which you breathe, while we're talking about the media being dishonest, I think this is the perfect time to talk about Lara Logan. So who is Lara Logan? Lara Logan, as I said earlier, she was a CBS reporter. She was a News 4 correspondent. And she appeared on Hannity from Wednesday. This is from Variety. We'll read a couple of the articles together. She appeared on Hannity on Wednesday to expand on her recent remarks characterizing the media as mostly liberal. Now, we've covered this plenty of times. We covered this from the NPR, the president, the CEO of NPR, who went out there and wrote a book on never really being involved with people on the right or the center. So he actually went out and did an adventure and learned so much about people that were conservative. And he said, look, I had never been around that before. I didn't know anybody. I'd been so indoctrinated, so in my political sphere, that I didn't even know what a conservative really acted like. I had projections, I had guesses, I had hypotheses, but they were not even accurate in any way, shape, or form. And so we had that issue, right? We have where people even believe that CNN is somehow a centrist organization, despite the fact that their narrative and agenda is synonymous with MSNBC, which is synonymous with Washington Post, which is synonymous with New York Times, which is synonymous with CBS, which is synonymous with ABC, right? All of these things are very similar, right? You can see the anti-right-wing rhetoric and the pro-left-wing rhetoric for the most part. Sometimes they'll pick and choose which left-wing they're more in favor of, which one they're going to criticize and which one they're going to accept, right? We saw this with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Nancy Pelosi when they were talking about the Green New Deal, as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has named it, or the Green Dream, as Nancy Pelosi was talking about, you could see where the divide between the left was. Some of them were like, yeah, Nancy Pelosi's right. This is ridiculous. It's going to destroy the infrastructure. It's going to, despite the intent of the bill, despite what it's saying that it's going to do, the end result will be the destruction. And certainly this is not only unattainable, but it will lead to the destruction of the economy. And other sources, right? CNN, I would say overall pushed a lot less against that bill. They were like, oh, I mean, it's kind of bad. Okay. You could see the divide, but I think it was undeniable. I think it's really undeniable here in 2019 that the left, or that the mainstream media is mostly liberal, mostly progressive, mostly left-wing, and Fox News is certainly authoritarian right. So I think that both of those are not good groups. But Lara Logan comes out and she says, look, I was on the inside. Here's a quote from her. It's obviously right because you get targeted. She said that she was committing professional suicide by criticizing the media. It's the same group of people. They've already started to target me again now, and I was expecting it. I know they're going to come after me again. The same people come after you. Logan went on to detail to precisely who she believes is targeting her. Would you guess who it is? Michael Calderon, who is at the Washington Post. I can literally give you the script now. I can tell you who the players are. Joe Hagan, Brian Stelter. It's the same people all the time, and they're all saying the same things, and they've come after Cheryl Atkinson, and they'll come after you, and they'll come after me. If there's any independent voices out there, if there are any journalists that are not beating the same drum and giving the same talking points, then we pay the price. She accused her critics of engaging in smear tactics as opposed to attacking the substance of what you're saying. They can't go after the things that matter, so they smear you personally, much like what we've seen from some of the viewers tonight. They go after your integrity. They go after your reputation as a person and as a professional, and they'll stop at nothing, she claimed. Logan made her initial comments during a podcast interview with Breitbart's Mike Ritland, implying a link between journalists' registered political party and reporting bias. Here's the big point, right? The media everywhere is mostly liberal, but in this country, 85% of journalists are registered Democrats. That means if you have 20 journalists in a room, randomly selected, 17 of them will be Democrats. You might have 2 Republicans. You might have 3 Republicans. You might have 1 independent in the group. So that's just a fact, right? And she added the news organizations on one side of the political spectrum have a lot of weight. Yes, when you have all of the other news organizations backing your every claim and supporting your narrative, 85% of the journalists out there supporting the same narrative and same agenda, you kind of get a lot more power. If they're all saying the same thing, the weight of that convinces you that it's true. You don't question it because everyone is saying it. It's kind of exactly what I was just saying. Logan's Hannity comments come on the same day anchors at MSNBC and CNN, as well as prominent Democratic politicians, were found to have been targeted by a Maryland Coast Guard lieutenant after he was arrested on a firearms charge. CNN, Don Lemon, Chris Cuomo, and Van Jones, MSNBC's Joe Scarborough, Chris Hayes, and Ari Melber were among the media figures cited in a computer file that prosecutors believe was a list of public figures targeted for racially and politically motivated attacks. Prosecutors say they found a large cache of firearms and steroids in Hanson's basement apartment, and that his Google searches included terms such as "what if Trump illegally impeached" and "best places in D.C. to see Congress people." I would assume that last one would be kind of a simple answer. Where would be the best place to find Congress people? Would it be Congress? Wow. This dude needed a Google search for that. Can we stop on that for a second? He needed to search on Google on where to find Congress people. Where do Congress people grow up? Where do they hang out? I believe that they're always hanging out in Congress, passing beers between themselves, having a good old time, and talking about how they're destroying the country one vote at a time, and that they don't give a crap about you, whether they're a Democrat or a Republican. They don't care. They don't care. Not one bit. Let me see if this one's got any more information. To me, that's a great representation of America's media, is that this tiny little corner where the women pray, you've got Breitbart and Fox News, and the others go, and from there on, you have CBS, ABC, NBC, Huffington Post, Politico, whatever, right? All of them. And that's the problem for me, because even if it was reversed, even if it was mostly on the right, that would be a problem for me. My experience has been that the more opinions you have, the more ways you can look at everything in life. Isn't that crazy? This sounds like a very smart woman. This sounds like a woman who understands that better ideas come from more ideas, not less ideas. But when you have just one agency, one giant agency of the media, pushing the same thing, pushing the same shtick down your throat, maybe it's not the best for the country. So whether it is all for the right, whether it is all for the left, regardless of where it comes from, being pushed the same narrative, the same agenda, is not within the tenor of the First Amendment, right? The freedom of press, and is not even good journalism. To be original, to have a new insight, to have a new look, that is what's so important. That's what people need to be listening to. Fox News isn't as conservative like it was. I agree with you, right? They've definitely they're flipping the switch in a lot of ways, but you can't really blame it. You can't really blame it because Fox News is pulling from the same pool of people, and 85%. It's a huge fundamental issue. So it's Lara Logan. She's my spirit animal right now. She's my spirit animal. I'm so glad that she's coming out and saying this. I'm glad that she's left CBS News, and I'm glad that now the media goes, she stepped away from the line. She's not on the left with us. Oh my God. And they come out and they vilify her. They attack her. They destroy her. They're trying to destroy her. And she's standing proudly saying, I knew this was going to come, and I know you're a disgusting human being for doing it. Thank you guys so much for the super hearts, by the way. You guys are all fantastic. Thank you guys so much for that. If you guys want to share it out, help me out. That would be appreciated as well. It's not so much. I appreciate the money. I appreciate the donations. But, reaching out to many people is also a good idea as well. So thank you guys for coming in for that. So I told you guys I would be remiss on having a show and not having something to talk about the police. Right? We talked a little bit about the police beforehand, how they suspended the Second Amendment rights of people who go to protest and then want to slap you with a fine and slap you with the tab for the security that they provide you. But now we're going to talk about a botched police raid, a no-knock raid, right? One of those great, fantastic ones. So this is from ABC, right? That left-leaning source I was talking to you about. A confidential informant didn't buy drugs at a southeastern Houston home where a botched police raid turned into a deadly shootout last month, according to a new search warrant. The shocking new information was revealed today after ABC 13 obtained 2 of several search warrants executed as part of the ongoing investigation following the deadly raid. The search warrant clearly shows the initial information used to obtain the no-knock search warrant involved a number of lies. In the original warrant, actually, hold on, I gotta give you guys a joke. Let's lighten the mood a little bit. It's not even gonna lighten the mood. It's a joke. It's a knock knock joke. All I need you guys to say is who's there. That's all I need. So somebody type into the comment section, just say who's there, and we will. I can continue on with this joke. So. All right, there we go. So, we're the police. We have a warrant. Sorry, wrong house. I shot your dog. The police are horrible, right? They suck. The no-knock jokes, the no-knock knock-knock jokes are just as bad as the no-knock raids. These are horrible. They're egregious. They're reprehensible, and they never work. They never work out the right way. We were continually seeing where these no-knock raids are causing tragedies to families, to individuals, to property owners, to everything else. I was reading one story yesterday where you had a police raid into a guy's house. The guy was asleep on the couch. The door gets blown in, almost hits the guy's dog, right? So for those of you people like me that actually care about animals and care about dogs, almost hits the dog with the door. come in, raid the house, and they're looking for cocaine. They find no cocaine, but they found a little bit of a leafy substance on the ground. They found a little bit, like a residue, and that was enough in order to pick this guy up and take him in. And despite the fact that he was a father, despite the fact that it was the police who destroyed his property, he was then, once he was released, was fined by his apartment complex for the damages done to his walls. So he had to pay for that, and he was also evicted because his walls were being destroyed by the police. These just aren't working. So, in the original warrant obtained on January 28th, the lead case of agent, Officer Gerald Goins, wrote that a confidential informant bought heroin at the house the day before the drug raid. The informant was also allegedly saw heroin and a weapon, which appeared to be a 9mm handgun, as he was buying the suspected drugs at the house. In the warrant, the informant allegedly returned to Goins with a brown powder substance, telling him that it was called boy, which is slang for heroin. Yep, got that boy. Maybe it was also, pedophilic stuff. But the confidential informant also said that the substance he allegedly brought at the home was packed in a large quantity of plastic baggies. All of that information was written in the search warrant, leading to a judge to find probable cause in signing it. Regina Nicholas, 58, and Tennis Tuttle, 59, were both killed in the raid at their home. I'm not going to say their address. And the 4 Houston Police Department officers were shot, and a 5th officer injured in his knee. But on Friday, in the warrants executed by the officers investigating the botched raid, it is clear that no confidential informant ever went to the house. In fact, all informants who worked with Goins told investigators they did not go into that home. There's a lot of pissed off cops. Houston Police Department Chief Acevedo says, going off about the latest details in the officer involved shooting, we know we've had a criminal violation already. He said about the internal investigation of officers involved in the botched raid. Investigators returned to Goins for the names and more informants who had all worked for Goins in the past. They all denied making a buy for Goins at the home. They also denied ever buying drugs from Nicholas or Tuttle. The warrant shows that the 2 bags of heroin were found in Goins' city vehicle. Why has he got in a city vehicle? An officer who's been temporarily relieved of duty told investigators he'd never seen the bags of heroin. However, that contradicts the original warrant indicating that the same officer did recognize the substance purchased by the confidential informant as heroin. The original warrant is what led to the raid of the house of on Harding. We know that the crime has been committed. It's a serious crime. When we go into someone's home, which is the sanctity of someone's home, it has to be truthful, it has to be honest, and it has to be absolutely factual. So we know there's a crime that's been committed, and there's a high probability that there will be a criminal charge. And I want to change that. There better be a damn criminal charge. There better be somebody getting locked up for a good amount of time for coming in and killing 2 people, and for allowing for 4 police officers to be killed in the defense of 2 people who were killed. 4 that were shot and a 5th officer that was injured in his knee. So if we had 4 officers that were shot, a 5th officer injured, and 2 innocents being killed, you best believe there better be damn criminal charges. I'm tired of the second. We have one set of standards for the populace and a second standard for law enforcement, a second standard for congresspeople. There's a second standard for people that are in office. Stop with the damn double standards and hold everybody accountable for their actions. If you don't want this to happen, then you make an example out of these people and you really hold them to it. I'm tired of seeing unlawful killing, police brutality, and complete F-ups done by the police, and for it to not be held, for people not to be held accountable for that. It's a huge disgrace. It needs to stop. So, if there are not criminal charges on this, then not only is this showing that we have a huge fundamental issue in America, which we already know we do, but the question becomes then, when do the people of America take back this country? When do we actually fight against those who are oppressing us, those who are coming in, killing the people that are innocent, taking their guns through red flag laws, preventing them from being able to defend themselves, and continue to legislate more and more people away from being able to obtain or carry or protect themselves, their families, or their property, and continue to tax us into oblivion. Right? When the discussion is about a 70% marginal tax rate, when the discussion is about a 2% or 3% asset forfeiture, when the discussion becomes about, a higher estate tax, this is not acceptable. Lori Posner, thank you for coming in tonight. Absolutely agree with you, Isaac. So I want to thank you guys for coming in tonight. I appreciate it. I'm glad that we got through all of those stories. That was quite a bit. So I apologize. Not enough time really tonight to open this up for a nice little discussion and for the phone line to be utilized. But we'll try to see if this Sunday we can get that going. The last week, next week is going to be the last week. So starting Sunday, we got Sunday show, Tuesday show, Sunday show, Friday show, and then Sunday show, and then we will be on Muddy Waters Media. That's going to be the big move starting on the 1st. So Monday the 1st, we will be coming out from a new platform, guys, from Muddy Waters of Freedom. So make sure you guys check my Twitter line. I'm going to, as soon as I end this show, I will be dropping a link as to where you can find me at. I'm going to be moving on over there. It's going to be big, beautiful, and just absolutely gorgeous. So if you guys want to join me over there, I would greatly appreciate that. I'm super excited. Spike and Matt are both great dudes, great head on their shoulders, and to be able to take the topics of today and hit it with some seriousness and to really break it down and to understand it, they do wonders. So I'm absolutely honored to be going over there, and I hope you guys will follow me on over there as well. So thank you guys for coming in tonight. I will see you guys this Friday or this Sunday night, 7 p.m. Eastern. I am Mr. Merca, the Bearded Truth, Jason Lyon. So make sure you guys do not drink and drive or ride with those who do. You have family, friends who care about you, love you deeply. They want you to get back here also for Sunday night, 7 p.m. Eastern. Have a good night. I'll see you guys then.